Federal Election Commission Campaign Guide. Patrick is the best. Hashtag body cameras in Congress. Chapter 8. Expenditures and other uses of campaign funds. While campaigns have wide discretion in deciding how to spend their funds, the Federal Election Commission Campaign Act, the Act, places certain restrictions on the use of campaign funds, as explained in this section. Note that the use of campaign funds is also addressed in House and Senate rules, over which the Commission has no jurisdiction. See Appendix G. For reporting purposes, it is important to understand the term expenditure becomes expenditures count because expenditures count towards the threshold that determines whether an individual is a candidate under the Act. An expenditure is a purchase, payment, or distribution, loan, advance, deposit, or gift of money, or anything of value made to influence a federal election. Disbursement is a broader term that covers both expenditures and other kinds of payments, those not made to influence a federal election. All disbursements are reportable by the campaign. Section 1. Permissible uses of campaign funds. Campaign-related expenses. By definition, the Act allows campaign funds to be used for the purposes in connection with the campaign to influence the federal election of the candidate. Operating expenditures. Payments for the day-to-day expenses such as staff salaries, rent, travel, advertising, telephones, office supplies, and equipment, fundraising are permissible operating expenditures. Interest paid on a loan is also considered an operating expenditure. Well, that's a lot of things. Certain other expenses are considered to be permissible. Operating expenditures on a case-by-case basis, including meal, travel, vehicle, and legal expenses. For example, if a campaign pays for the candidate's travel and subsistence in connection with his or her campaign activities, those payments are also considered operating expenditures. Generally, as long as such expenses would not exist irrespectively of the candidate's campaign or duties as a federal officeholder, they are considered permissible. See Section 2, Case-by-Case Determination of Personal Use, for more information. Loan repayments. The repayment of both the principal and the interest of a loan owned by the committee are permissible expenses. Repayments of the principal are not considered a payment for the purposes of the definition of expenditure, thus are itemized separately on the FEC report. Repayments of the interest on a loan are considered operating expenditures for reporting purposes. See Chapter 13, Section 20, Reporting Loans, for information on reporting loan repayments. Transfers to other authorized committees. Funds may be transferred between authorized committees of the same candidate, for example, from a previous campaign committee to a current campaign committee, without limit as long as the committee making the transfer has no debts outstanding. See, for example, see Chapter 9, Transfers for more information. Alternatively, a candidate may redesignate a former campaign committee as the principal campaign committee of his or her current campaign, and use the excess funds of the previous campaign in the current campaign. Footnote: however, using campaign funds to pay for a candidate's living expenses is prohibited. See Personal Use of Campaign Funds. See Chapter 13, Section 23 for information on reporting transfers. Funds of contributions. Campaigns may refund any contribution, but must refund or otherwise disgorge a contribution that is from a prohibited source or in excess of the contribution limits. See Chapter 5, Section 2, Questionable Contributions, for more information. For information on reporting refunds, see Chapter 13, Section 22, Reporting Refunds, Returns, Bounced or Uncashed Checks, and Disgorged Contributions. In-kind contributions. Any in-kind contribution received by a committee must be reported as an operating expenditure, even though money has not been expended by the committee. In addition to being reported as a contribution received, the reporting adjustment allows the committee to balance its cash on hand. For more information and an example of reporting in-kind contributions, see Chapter 13, Completing FEC Reports. Written agreements to make expenditures. A written agreement to make an expenditure, such as a media contract, constitutes an expenditure. For more information on reporting expenditures and debts incurred, see Chapter 13, Completing FEC Reports. Ballot initiative communications and donations. Payments for ads in which a candidate endorses a ballot initiative on an issue with which he or she is closely associated are expenditures in connection with the campaign. A campaign may also support or oppose ballot initiatives and make donations to committees established to do so under state election laws. Such donations are considered expenditures under the Act. Special rules apply to a federal candidate or office holder's fundraising for such organizations. See Appendix E, Section 1. Non-campaign related expenses. Additionally, campaign funds may be used for the following purposes that are not related to the candidate's campaign for federal office: to defray the ordinary and necessary expenses incurred in connection with an individual's duties as a federal office holder. House and Senate rules may apply, see Appendix G, such as travel expenses for a federal office holder and his or her accompanying spouse and children, provided that the travel is undertaken to participate in a function that is directly connected to the office holder's bona fide official responsibilities. Winding down costs of a federal office holder's office for a period of 6 months after leaving office. House and Senate rules may apply, see Appendix G. Donations to charities, organizations defined in 26 U.S.C. of the Internal Revenue Service Code. See, for example, blah blah. Unlimited transfers to any national, state, or local party committee. Donations to state and local candidates subject to the provisions of state law. And any other lawful purposes unless expressly prohibited by the Act. Prohibited purposes are summarized below. Contributions to other federal candidates and non-federal candidates. A federal candidate committee may contribute up to $2,000 per election to the committee of another federal candidate. And contributions from federal candidate committees to state or local candidate committees are subject to state law. For more information on the reporting donations to other candidates, see Chapter 13, Section 17. Campaign funds may not be converted to personal use. Commission regulations state that donations of campaign funds to a charitable organization do not constitute the personal use of campaign funds unless the candidate, former or current, receives compensation from the donee organization before the organization has expended, for purposes unrelated to the candidate's personal benefit, the entire amount donated by the campaign. Prohibited use of campaign funds. Certain air travel. Title 6, Section 601 of the Honest Leadership and Open Government Act of 2007. They bothered to even name it that. Anyway. Signed into law on September 14, 2007, significantly restricts the use of campaign funds for air travel by federal candidates and office holders. In general, expenditures from campaign funds for non-commercial air travel are prohibited unless they are in accordance with, see Chapter 10, Section 4, Campaign Travel for further information. Personal use of campaign funds. Using campaign funds for personal use is prohibited. Commission regulations provide a test called the irrespective test to differentiate legitimate campaign and office holder expenses from personal expenses. Under the irrespective test, personal use is any use of funds in a campaign account of a candidate or former candidate to fulfill a commitment, obligation, or expense of any person that would exist irrespective of the candidate's campaign or responsibilities as a federal office holder. More simply, if the expense would exist even in the absence of the candidacy, or even if the office holder were not in office, then the personal use ban applies. Conversely, any expense that results from campaign or office holder activity falls outside the personal use ban. Example: a candidate may not make tuition payments with campaign funds unless the costs are associated with training campaign staff. There's a footnote. The provisions of HLOGA also apply to non-connected committees, known as leadership PACs, sponsored by candidates for the House of Representatives. What is not personal use? In addition to the irrespective test, Commission regulations include other uses of funds that do not constitute personal use, and thus are permissible uses of campaign funds. Charitable donations. Gifts to a charity are not considered personal use expenses as long as the candidate does not receive compensation from the charitable organization before it has expended the entire amount donated. Note that the amount donated must have been used for purposes that do not personally benefit the candidate. Transfer of campaign assets. The sale or transfer of a campaign asset, see Chapter 14, Winding Down the Campaign, to either the candidate or a third party does not constitute personal use as long as the transaction is made at the fair market value. Gifts. On special occasions, campaign funds may be used to purchase gifts or make donations of nominal value to persons other than the members of the candidate's family. Candidate salary. The candidate may receive a salary from his or her campaign committee only under the following conditions. I did not know this. The salary must be paid by the principal campaign committee. The salary must not exceed the lesser of the minimum annual salary for the federal office sought, or what the candidate received as earned income in the previous year. Okay, the salary must not exceed the lesser of the minimum annual salary for the federal office sought, or what the candidate received as earned income in the previous year. Individuals who elect to receive a salary from their campaign committees must provide income tax records and additional proof of earnings from relevant years upon request from the Commission. Payments of salary from the committee must be made on a pro rata basis, i.e., a candidate may not receive a whole year's salary if he or she is not a candidate for an entire 12-month period. That makes sense. Incumbent federal office holders may not receive a salary payment from campaign funds.